Chapter 19 of For Heaven's Sake, Little Talks to Little Folks by Reverend Gerald T. Brennan. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Maria Therese. Chapter 19 Jesus' Workshop. Did you ever watch anybody making candy? It's lots of fun, isn't it? Well, this morning I'm going to tell you about a friend of mine who makes and sells candy. Everybody calls my friend the Candy Man. The Candy Man loves children, and children love the Candy Man. Every afternoon on their way home from school, children stop at the candy store and buy their candy. Sometimes the Candy Man tells the children a story. Of course, that's what the children like. But there's something that the children like better. The children love to watch the Candy Man as he makes his candy. He mixes the chocolate, pours in nuts and raisins, and stirs the candy with a big wooden spoon. Oh, the Candy Man works very hard. Every day you'll find the Candy Man working in his shop. Every night about 8 o'clock, the Candy Man closes his shop. Then he goes home. Where does the Candy Man live? Well, the Candy Man lives in a little room over the candy shop. He lives all alone. Nobody ever visits him at night. Of course, the Candy Man must be very lonesome, but he never complains. And that's how the Candy Man has lived for over 40 years. He works in his shop all day. He spends his nights alone. All alone in his little room over the candy shop. Do you know, boys and girls, that the Candy Man is very much like Jesus? I suppose you wonder why. Well, I'll tell you. The altar is our church and Jesus' workshop. The little house on top of the altar is the little room where Jesus lives. Yes, Jesus lives upstairs over his workshop, just as the Candy Man lives upstairs over his candy shop. Every morning Jesus leaves his room, comes downstairs to the altar, and works where everyone can see him. Jesus works on the altar. Jesus works in the Mass. You can see Jesus as he works in the Mass. Everyone can see Jesus as he works in the Mass. Why, you can even hear Jesus talk while he works. You know, boys and girls, Jesus works very hard in the Mass. What does Jesus do? Well, Jesus honors God for us. Jesus thanks God for all of God's gifts. Jesus asks God to bless us. Jesus, too, pays God for our sins. Jesus does all this work for us in the Mass. Jesus does all this work on our altar. The altar is Jesus' workshop. After Mass, when his work is done, where does Jesus go? Why, Jesus leaves the altar, his workshop, and goes upstairs to his little house over the altar. Jesus lives all alone. Jesus lives upstairs over his workshop. Of course, you can stop and visit with Jesus at any time. Jesus is always at home. Jesus is always in his little house on the altar. Jesus is always happy to see little boys and girls. And Jesus is especially happy on Sunday mornings when he sees little children at Mass. Jesus knows that you've come to watch him work, but you don't have to come to Mass only on Sunday mornings. Why, you can come to Mass any morning. You can't come to Mass too often. Come and watch Jesus as he works in the Mass. End of chapter 19.